Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Hidden Resources, the Legacy and Importance of BIPOC Women in Giving. Please note that closed captioning is available and can be enabled at the bottom of your Zoom screen. My name is Melissa Vargas, and I'm the Operations and Events Coordinator at Philanthropy Together. Philanthropy Together is a global initiative to grow and strengthen the field of collective giving with programming like We Give Summit. Today, we're so excited to discuss how BIPOC women have powered philanthropy throughout history, as well as the importance of women having decision-making power and influence in the sector of philanthropy. For our today's session, please engage with us in the chat. We also encourage you to share your feedback following the session by completing our 2-question poll at the end. Before we get started, I want to share that we will be doing a random drawing of one attendee who is here today. They'll have the chance to receive a book from one of this year's speakers. It's really an opportunity to engage more deeply with the work of our We Give Summit speakers this year. So stay tuned, make sure you hang out for the entire session, and we'll announce at the end the winner of the raffle for today. So with that, I'm happy to introduce today's moderator, Tiffany Thompson with Echoing Green.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Really excited to be here today. As someone who has been on the road, it is exciting to do a conversation from my house today. So really excited to be here. And as she said, please be active as possible in the chat. We want this to feel more of like a conversation versus a bunch of folks speaking to you. So please engage as you are hearing some awesome stuff come out of the panelists today. Please join us in the chat. So I want to just ground us a bit before I welcome in our panelists. And as I was preparing for this session, as we think about the role of Black and Brown women doing this work around philanthropic giving, I was reminded of Georgia Gilmore. And for folks who don't know who Georgia Gilmore is, I'm going to give you a little bit of context. In 1955, after a bus driver in Montgomery, Alabama, ejected her and left her stranded, this single mother of 6, waged what we would call an enduring one-woman refusal to get on city public transportation ever again. 2 months later, when the Montgomery boycott began to become a citywide movement following the arrest of who we all know, Rosa Parks, when she refused to give up her seat on the bus, Gilmore, who at the time was 35 years old, was a cook and a midwife by trade, mobilized one of her own. She organized an anonymous network of fish frying, pork chop smothering, collard green, the kind of food that was made by your home, your mother, with cakes, pies, all the things. And she did that to fund the gas, the insurance, and the repairs necessary to keep the fleet of as many of 325 donated vehicles ready for the road to sustain the boycott. To protect both the cooks and their customers from potential backlash, or jeopardizing their jobs, more than half of the employed Black women in the Montgomery boycott at the time worked for white families. So what Gilmore did when she decided to start this is she called her group the Club from Nowhere. Why, you ask? Because when anyone ever asked her where did the money come from, she could honestly and accurately say, nowhere. This notion of protest and revolution have always been embedded in Black and Brown women like Gilmore. And today's conversation, I want to dive deeper into what it means for Black and Brown women to lead movements that are led by money, because we know that movements don't move without money. And I want to be able to introduce our 2 speakers today who have been on the front lines of this work, doing this work around giving for a really long time. I first want to bring Anais Amaya to the stage, and Anais is a builder of partnerships and community programs. She's an ambitious idealist who challenges communities to break cycles of generational poverty, and she's currently the senior program manager at LCF, Latino Giving Circles in Southern California. Anais, thank you for joining me today. And then I also want to bring on Fonta Gilliam, who is the CEO and founder of wellthi, a fintech company based in Washington, D.C. Fonta is incredible and has over 10 years of development finance experience working in the United States and all over the globe. I'm going to bring that contribution to this conversation today. She's also an Echoing Green Fellow, in which I work for. So I gave a lot about, the importance of the historical context of why we do this work, particularly Black and Brown women. I talked a little bit about the importance of Miss Gilmore. And as three Black and Brown folks who sit on the screen, we don't just get up and say we're going to work in philanthropy. It's just not something that we decide to do because it's fun.
So true.
We do it because we're
meant.
inspired, exactly. We do it because we're inspired by something. There are stories and people who walk with us as we decide to get up every single day to do this work around philanthropic giving. So I want to ground us there, right? Why did you decide to do this work? Whose story would you like to bring into this conversation as an inspiration for why you do the work that you do? And whoever wants to jump in first,
Fonta, go
right ahead.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to. And there's always kind of like that one thing in life that kind of puts you on this trajectory, I think. And for me, believe it or not, it was working as an American diplomat. I was straight out of graduate school. I was in South Korea. I was on the visa line, and every diplomat has to process visas. It's kind of your rite of passage. This lady comes to my visa window, a Korean woman, small business owner. She had all this money in her account, and it was confusing because she was essentially a street vendor, right? She had what we call a food truck. She would sell food out of it. She shouldn't have had hundreds of thousands of dollars in her account. And I almost denied her request to immigrate to the United States. And I almost denied her visa. And when I asked her, how did you get this money? She basically laid out the story of a giving circle. Her community all pooled resources. They saved, which she explained, it was hundreds of people were saving in her neighborhood, and they rotate that money. And after a couple of years, it was finally her turn. After she had been saving with so many neighbors, funding financial goals internally outside the bank. And it was finally her turn, and she was using her money to immigrate to the United States to start a business. And I got fascinated. At first, I was kind of like, oh, what is this? I don't understand this. How could this work? And I got my colleagues who were South Korean women. They all verified, like, yes, this is what we do. Sometimes we can't open bank accounts. Sometimes we have to figure out other ways to save our money. It's hard to get a loan. So we pool our resources and work together. And that's where I was first exposed to social finance, how empowering it can be when banks and investors are not an option, when big money philanthropy is not an option, and how the community can pool resources to actually help people reach their financial goals. I got fascinated by it. And later that became the inspiration for wellthi and our tech. So that's how I got into this.
I love that. The random meeting of the woman who inspired you. Anais, go ahead.
Real talk.
I've also had so many random happenings throughout my life, but now looking back, you can connect all the dots. And I can see how it led me to where I am right now. And I guess I could start, my story started when I was 17 and I got pregnant and dropped out of high school. And obviously that changed my world from one day to another after looking at that little test and seeing the two little lines and then everything getting blurry around me. But obviously as a young mother, there's a lot of hardships that you go through. And I was told that I was done. I wasn't going to do anything with my life because I had become such a young mother. So then I told myself, I'm going to pick the hardest thing that I can think of and go to school for that.
Wow.
And I said, I'm going to become a doctor because my family growing up, I always saw them in community, doing something for community constantly. And it's just part of my life. And I thought something to give back, but the hardest thing I can think of. And then I'm going through undergrad as pre-med and I realized, I don't want to be a doctor, but I still want to work in community and I don't know what to do. So I just let life take me. And then one day this research project fell on my lap that was looking at the social determinants of health. And that's what steered me more into social justice. And then I'm in this work and I'm working at a hospital in San Francisco and just listening to the families as they come in and talk about the hardships that they endure as immigrants and all of these things that they're going through because they're in this new country. And I'm thinking, I want to do more. I want to do more. And one day I'm in Facebook and Latino Community Foundation pops up. And I look at their website and I see faces like my family and I see what they're doing. And then I dive into giving circles and I think, whoa, I know this concept. I grew up with it. We call it tandas in Mexico
Right.
and it's people getting together and it's like a savings way that everybody gives. And then at one point or another, you also receive. And it's something very common sense. It's nothing special. It's just what you do.
I love it.
You're in community and you're supposed to help one another.
Right.
And I loved it. And I thought, whoa, I could work in this with people that look and speak like me.
Right.
And it just it was really a transformative experience for me. Finding a group of people that look like me, that thought like me, that were thinking about my community and just inspired me to then say, I'm going to go for it. And I just dived in, not knowing anything about philanthropy, because the word philanthropy, I recently learned about very, very recently. I had no idea what it was.
Right.
And to be able to have a job like this, my family's they're always listening to my conversations because I'm living back home now. And they're like, what do you do for work? You talk about love all the time. And I'm like, isn't it crazy?
That sounds awesome.
So yeah, I would say all of that to say my family really inspired me.
I love that. And I see some folks in the chat, Sarah, don't even get me started on love. I'll go down a whole bell hooks rant, but I agree with you. I think when you think about philanthropy and the ways in which you should give, if you're going to be doing this work, you have to love the people who you fund and love the people that you work with and for. So I love that you brought that in. And as someone who is a first generation Jamaican, I too know what it means like to say, oh, I'm going to become a doctor, because that's all you see in terms of your cultural perspective of like, what does giving and being a giver look like? So the ways in which we think about culture and how it inspires us the through line is so clear. In Jamaica, we call it a susu. And that is like a great tee up for what I'm going to ask you guys next, particularly around Fonta's work. Is like, you told me about like what inspires you to do what you do, but both of you enter this work from different perspectives, right? One from the social innovation, entrepreneurial perspective of, I'm just going to build the thing because it doesn't exist.
Right.
And then Anais, you from like the foundation perspective of, there's a bigger system here that is at play, but what would it look like if we put Black and Brown people at the hands of that giving? What if we just formalize that a bit in the foundation world? So I want to be able to dive into like the different approaches that you all take to this giving. Fonta, you from I'm gonna start this thing because the world is crazy. And then Anais, you from the foundation side, like tell me your approach, why that approach, and the current work that you guys are doing there. Fonta, let's start.
Okay. So for me, it was very different. I didn't grow up with tandas. But what's ironic is that when I came home from being overseas for so long, I moved back into DC. I was talking to my mom about, hey, I got fascinated about how all these people around the world are doing this kind of social finance giving circle thing. My mom was like, what, you mean a birthday club? And I was like, what? So apparently my aunts and my grandmothers did do susus. But for whatever reason, that tradition kind of stops. And I think a lot of African Americans missed out on the power of that. And she was like, oh yeah, birthday club. We used to do it every year growing up. And I'm looking at her like, what in the world? And why do I not know about this? And why don't we still do it now as a family? And so as I started to talk to more people in the States, it became obvious how powerful they are. A great way to make people save, use things like peer pressure and peer accountability. A great way to help you learn how to save and do it with people that have similar financial goals to you. A great way to build trust around, hey, if I don't have any other options, I know that I can go to this resource. And I actually decided I was going to try it. I was trying to buy a house in DC. It was really hard to save a down payment for that house. I joined a susu, real talk, with some friends from college. And that's what made me save, because I didn't want to be the only person putting in. And that's when it clicked for me, like, not only is this something cool I've learned about that was maybe in my family's history and got exposed to, this is also something that actually works. Like, why don't we formalize this? Why aren't banks using this? Like, people there, we all have these universal challenges around how do we save better? How can we be smarter about how we use our money? How do we get out of debt? And the thing that's working is happening outside the banking system. And that's crazy to me. And so I really went on a mission, starting with my Echoing Green Fellowship, who funded me when I was literally an idea and gave me the courage and the community to leave a really amazing job as a foreign service officer and a consultant to actually dive into my goal and my idea full time. Probably wouldn't have been able to do it without that lifeline. I started to kind of really test, how can I modernize this with tech, with fintech? How can I get the banks to buy into this? What does this system need to look like so that it's not charging the people that are trying to empower themselves, but tapping into resources that are there to actually mainstream this concept of giving circles and social finance within the banking system. And so that's what we focused on, building the technology, getting buy-in from banks and behavioral change from banks around thinking differently about saving. That's common in Black and Brown communities, but maybe not so common in other communities. And then getting them to buy into technology and offering it to their customers. So that was my approach. I wanted to rethink the system and the banking infrastructure as a way to kind of get this trend, this tradition to market.
And one more for you, Fonta, then I move to you, Anais. When you think about where you were and where you are now, talk to us a little bit about any success that you've seen, anything that you've seen that has made you iterate or pivot from your original conception to now.
Yeah, for folks that know me, I started out with a consulting firm that was testing these ideas. I learned very quickly in talking to banks and doing a lot of research with different communities that do tandas and susus and gamayas, if you're from the Middle East, or keetones if you're Korean. Learned a lot in that process, and I learned that my idea wasn't the right idea. I need to actually think not direct to consumer, which a lot of folks had tried and wasn't working as well. I need to think about how I can get banks to adopt this and how I can actually get them to pay me to build this, and then actually use the banking industry to mainstream this and have the kind of impact that I want globally. And so I've had to pivot. I had to rebrand, I had to rebuild my tech, I had to relaunch it. It was really tough because I had to really it was just harder, right? I took the harder route, but it paid off. And that's something I learned along the way. You won't know if you have it right until you put it out there and try it, learn from your mistakes, pivot if you need to, own that, and then go after what you know will work. And ultimately it'll pay off. So that was kind of my journey.
Awesome. Anais, how about you jump in and tell us a little bit about the work that the Latino Community Foundation is doing?
We're bringing different voices to the table. Traditional philanthropy has been the same from the beginning, and that's not normal. Change is inevitable. It should be happening all the time, and it's not. And why isn't it? Because we keep looking at it from the same lens. You need to bring other voices, other eyes to look at it. We in our cultures, there's a plethora of wisdom in giving. I mean, when you look at philanthropy and the definition of philanthropy, it's love for humanity. And why is it that we're only looking at it from just one lens?
Right.
It's love. Love has no barriers. Love has no boxes. It just flows, and that's why we should bring people from different cultures and perspectives to show us how they do it. And we're showing it from the Latino lens in our meetings, like the way we do our meetings.
Love it.
We bring our culture into every single one of our meetings. Our members are excited to actually show up to our meeting. It's not just another thing that they're putting on their resume. They actually get excited. I get surprised all the time because sometimes they'll run into me in the street. They're like, Anais, it's been so long since I've seen you. And they hug me, and it's family. We've built this community that's around familia, and you feel it in every single one of our gatherings. It's personal. It's love. It's like you feel it in your chest. It's not just doing it for the tax break or doing it for pictures to put them up on the gram. It's personal. And that's what we're showing people. It's reminding people of what philanthropy is. And it's not this system. It's people. It's love for the people. And we're bringing it back. to its roots, which is people.
Yeah.
And at the core of the people work that you're doing, walk us through what that looks like. Like, how do you actually do that? Like is it through community meetings? Tell me a little bit more like what the how is. What does that approach look like for you guys?
We have 3 meetings throughout the year where we talk about funding priorities. We discuss what's going on in the particular area of the group. We have 20 giving circles across the state of California. A lot of them are geographical based. So we talk about what's going on in that area. What are the issues that are important to the community at that time? And then we dive in and we hear from speakers, hear from the leaders on the ground where the need is where there's most need. And then we as a foundation, we provide a list of organizations for the members to review themselves. And then we accompany them until the very end where they choose 3 organizations to invite to a pitch. We listen to them. It's an opportunity for you to really connect with these community leaders, listen from them directly. And it's not to just hear a pitch, it's to build that relationship and really disrupt that grantee donor relationship that philanthropy is so used to.
I love that.
It's walking hand in hand with the leaders, with the experts that are on the ground that know what's happening, not showing up and saying, hey, we know what you need.
Right.
Listening to the community and working together to really push for that change that our communities desperately need right now.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Fonta, were you going to say something? I feel like you were chiming in.
I totally love the fact that you're kind of changing the power dynamics in giving. I think that's so important. I see it in venture capital too, but I think with giving, it's just something that's just been so institutionalized. You know, this whole mindset of, I know what you need, I have the funding, and I'm going to tell you what to do. That never works. And it hasn't since the beginning. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys take a different perspective, because not a lot of folks do that.
Yeah, and we need more people like you, like that are speaking up on it and are saying like, this is, we don't have to follow, just
we need to work together.
There we go. That is exactly it. And I mean, when you think about like, you know, the opportunity for 2 Black and brown folks, 2 Black and brown women to work together, when you think about the role of, in this conversation, we're talking about Black and brown women as the architects of philanthropy, like, when you think about that as an impetus to this work and to like the ancestral journey that we've all taken to get here, like, why is it important to place or like to elevate Black and brown women as architects of philanthropy when we think about what that end goal of an equitable community looks like for people that look like us? Like, what are the values that come out of that when you elevate Black and brown women to be the architects of philanthropic giving?
You want to go first?
I'll go for it. I feel that people have been missing out so much by leaving women out. I'm thinking about my grandmother, who I'm from the border of El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez. So I've always lived in Juarez, would cross the border to go to school in the US side. And growing up, I remember going to her house and there was always somebody there. And it was somebody who was on their way to the US. She always had food. She always had blankets. She always had a space for somebody. And now that I look back and I think of who introduced me to philanthropy, it was her. And the work that she did was incredible. And why don't we tell those stories? Why do I just hear the stories of the same older white men that are in philanthropy? Why don't I hear stories about women like us? They're not there. And for somebody, I mean, representation, again, when you see somebody that looks like you, that speaks like you, and is doing incredible work in the world, that inspires you, that lights a fire in you to go and do the same and keep it going. Again, we have so much. Women carry these communities.
Right.
We pass our wisdom into generation after generation. Why not listen to what we have to give and then bring us together? Like, we should be collaborating. There's so much that can come from us. Just, I mean, right here, two brains are better than one, three better
Right.
than two. This working together and dreaming up the future that we wanted growing up, I think is really, really important, and really provides a space for the world that we envision.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. You know, I don't even have much to add to that. We need these voices to bring different perspectives and solutions to these problems. You know, so yeah, I think women are the key to all of that.
I want to shift us a little bit into like hopes and dreams and what does it look like in the future. But I just want to touch two things before I get there. Well, one, it's more so about the work that the both of you do, right? Like Fonta, when you think about where wellthi is now, we are sitting in a room of over 100 folks, right, who care about giving, particularly to Black and Brown women, because they came to the session. What would you need? Like if you were, someone were to ask you, like, how can I be like a giver to you and the work that you're doing, what would you need?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a good question. I mean, there's so many ways to give, right? And I've learned that, you know, we all know the statistics about how difficult it is for Black and Brown women to get funding. So that's not even something I need to reiterate. I feel like I say that a lot. Less than 1% of us gets venture capital. So we have to bootstrap our businesses, and it takes longer and it's harder. So if you're in a position to do that, invest in funds that are actually deploying to Black and Brown startups directly, not just training, but actual funding, I think that I would really encourage people to consider doing that. Organizations too, like Echoing Green, oftentimes you need both types of funding, equity and not equity-based. I think also, you know, I get a lot of offers for mentorship, and I love mentors. I gotta tell you, I wouldn't even be here today without some very smart people guiding me and hitting me on the head when Fonta's too stubborn to see things clearly. But I think if you're going to be a mentor, make sure it's backed by action as well. You know, when I say action, I mean, be willing to open a door, make a call. You know, when you're in that room by yourself and you have a scrappy startup or organization that you feel would be great for this opportunity, pitch them. I feel like oftentimes people want to tell you what to do, but they're not willing to take that extra step to actually help you operationalize that or achieve it. And it's oftentimes it's more than just the knowledge, it's the access that we don't have. And so that's something I would highly encourage for folks that are on the line that are mentoring and are supporting Black and Brown women and whatever, whether it's philanthropy or for profit. That's a big one. And then, you know, I think the last thing would be do business with us, you know, grant to us, buy our stuff, download my app. Sometimes that's the best way to support getting that kind of opportunity-based revenue generating opportunities, you know, giving folks a shot in a small business as opposed to going to kind of like, you know, big tech or a large retailer or a well-known nonprofit versus a smaller, scrappy one. You know, take a shot on the little guy. So those would be my three suggestions.
Okay, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah.
I loved what you ended on, and I have been thinking a lot of how do we increase the longevity of the dollars in our communities. We often just don't think of the power that we have in every single dollar that we spend. Every dollar that you spend, you're supporting a cause, whatever that company or business is supporting. Let's be more conscientious of where we're spending that money, because you're voting, you're investing, you're really putting your energy into something. And we're not really thinking of what that something is, but it could have a huge difference in our communities. So yeah, you don't have to think of just giving money and give immense amounts of money. It's like with every single dollar that you spend every day, where is that going?
Yep. And be a little more intentional. Don't waste it. You know, a lot of us own a lot of fancy shoes and love Starbucks every day. Maybe we could be giving more.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I can also find you guys better coffee. But anyways, my last question, and then I want to be able to open it up to the folks on the chat. So please start to prepare your questions. You can drop them in the chat. Would love to be able to hear from you all. So it's not just us talking to you. We are not the only experts in this room. You bring all the wisdom as well. I want to be able to just talk about like, what are your hopes and dreams? Like, what is it continuing to inspire you as you think about giving, from your perspective, from the lane of work that you're doing? What are your hopes for the giving sector for the next 50 years and beyond? And where do you see like some shining hope in the current work now?
I would say, for me, of course, giving circles, there's more of them, there's bigger of them, but when tying it back to what I said about philanthropy and how it has stayed the same, I hope that the giving circle way that we do things doesn't stay the same. I hope that it keeps evolving and transforming, that we bring in more innovative ideas, that we bring more voices in and culture, and that we really bring it back to the people. I feel so cheesy. I always make fun of my supervisor because she's constantly talking about love. And then I'm like, oh, I'm the same now. But really, it is about love. It's not about grant proposals. No, it's about people. It's bringing it back to the people. And what really inspires me and gives me hope is looking at the next generation of folks coming up. I have a 19-year-old son, and hearing the way that he talks, the way that he thinks, it gets me so excited of what's coming in the future. These young people are not scared. I think our generation, there's many spaces where we go in and we don't feel comfortable and we don't say things and speak up because we feel uncomfortable. And these kids are coming in and they're just telling you in your face what it is. And that's exciting, because I'm thinking in 50 years, what is this going to look like? I hope that it's something that I can say, I had no idea it was going to turn into this, because that means that other people very different from I came in and changed it. And that I could just say, I'm so proud that I was part of that way back when, and look at it now. That gets me excited to think of where we're going, and all of these new and younger faces coming in and really transforming what started so long ago for the benefit of rich people, really, because philanthropy started for tax breaks. And I can't wait for the moment where I look back and I say, yes, look at how far we've come and how we've really brought it back to its core roots of philanthropy, which is love for the people.
Love that. Fonta, on to you.
For me, and I mean this, it sounds crazy, but I'm really on a mission to make the world think differently about how people build wealth and build generational wealth. It's not something that you do on your own in isolation. It's not just for people that are lucky. If you don't have the resources, you're not hopeless. I really feel truly that people build wealth better together. It starts with community and sharing, and then it moves to trust and love and giving. And then it moves to actually being strategic on how you leverage it and being smart with the resources that you have. And it's really hard to figure that out in isolation, doing it just by yourself or just within your own small nuclear family. Most of us don't have that luxury. We don't have trust funds and rich uncles and people that groomed us since the beginning. And so if you don't have that, what do you have? You have a community, and don't be afraid to use it. So our tech, what we're trying to really offer to the financial services industry is really centered around that, helping people, whether they know each other or not, who have shared financial goals, figure out ways to build wealth better together. And I want to mainstream that, and I want it to be the new way to save and build wealth, to get us out of these old kind of antiquated structures that really aren't working for a large majority of us, particularly Black and Brown folks and Black and Brown women.
I love that immensely. I kind of just want to sign like my niece and nephews up for that, like immediately. So for real, we got to talk about that. All
right.
You both have been incredible, and I could have this conversation all day, but I want to bring in some questions from the people in the chat. We got a +1 on Kelly Bates' question, which I thought was just a great question. And either one of you can really chime in here. The question is, can giving circles reach scale? the power of large foundation philanthropy is still real and dominating. So when you think about giving circles, how far can it go? How wide, how deep can it really go? I guess the question is, how do you define scale too? But I'll leave that to you guys to dive into that. What do you think?
Well, I can throw one thing out while you're thinking. I met one of my friends from college. She is Ethiopian American. Excuse me, she's gonna kill me. She's Eritrean American. She told me she was in an eku, which is the same as a susu or tanda, with 1,000 people in her tribe. 1,000 people in a giving circle. So I'm just saying, like, when you say scale, can you imagine 1,000 people pooling resources and rotating that money in one tribe? That's kind of powerful. How big can they get? I mean, anyway, so I don't know. I'd love to get your thoughts on that because you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the same. I mean, how big is there a limit to how big it can get? I don't think so. And I'm thinking of how, like us, we became the largest network of Latino philanthropists in the country while only being in California. We're just in California. It's nothing compared to the whole country. And not just thinking of that, also thinking of how do we between different circles work together and collaborate and bring different different customs, different ways of looking at things and working together across sectors, not just staying within your own. There's so much out there that I feel that's the next step. Not only getting more people within one circle, but having different circles collaborating and doing work together.
Have you seen that, Anais, where different giving circles across the country are working together?
Yes. Actually, not across the country, but in LA during the pandemic, our LA Giving Circle partnered up with it's Black Giving Circle through I'm forgetting right now the name of the foundation that they're under, but yeah, they collaborated during the pandemic, and since then they've been in talks of how do we work together. Brown and Black folks, why don't we come together and do something else more than just one grants night and moving just funds once a year? How do we keep these conversations going? Because a lot of the battles that we're fighting, they're the same, and we should really be united. So I feel like there's already you're starting to see more and more of it, but there's still so much ahead and so much work to do.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna ask another question, and I'll also chime in here. Where am I? Lauren asked, as a Native-led nonprofit, what are the most equitable and efficient platforms streamlined for BIPOC leaders to apply for sustainable funding? And Fonta is like someone who is looking for money all the time. When you think about like the places that you've applied, anything that come to mind to you in terms of like an equitable streamlined process?
Yeah, so I can speak mainly for like for-profit organizations to start. I've had a couple grant opportunities. So the ones that really helped early on were, again, Echo and Green is dope. Whether you're an idea, you're an established organization, it's a great funding vehicle. I've done accelerator programs work really well. And there's a website that I'll put in the chat called f6s.com that gives you every accelerator pitch, VC opportunity in the world, actually. They're really, really comprehensive. You can apply through the website. I've had people help me through that resource. So I'll share that with everyone. It's mainly for for-profit companies, but any sector that you're looking to raise money or pitch for money, really great. And then I would say a lot of these corporations are doing a really good job of putting money out there for Black and Brown communities. You just got to know where to look. Sometimes it's through their CSR, corporate social responsibility arm, and they'll do grants, great vehicle. Other times it's through their innovation labs. It's a great way to build a relationship with the Fortune 500 that might never give you the time of day.
Right.
So programs like MasterCard Start Path, Techstars has been a great one. 1863 Ventures was a great one. There's so many. And so happy to share more if there's anything in particular you're working on, but those would be the two tracks I'd start with.
And then I would add also, let's push these foundations to change, also to see that a lot of the time the requirements that they're asking for their grants are just it's sometimes ridiculous. Our nonprofit organizations are doing so much work, and their employees are stretched out thin, overworked and underpaid, and sometimes counting pencils so that they could put them in their report for $5,000. So also let's put that on us to bring that up and push these institutions to, hey, you got to change. Things cannot stay the same, and you can't be asking so much for your small grants. Come on. But that comes from us speaking up. So we gotta step up, and we gotta push back a little.
I love that. We have a few more minutes, and I really want to make sure I get this question in, because while I wear a number of hats, Senior Director of Global Partnerships, or whatever my title is at Equine Green, I think the most important to me is I'm an AAU basketball coach for a girls team, and I'm deeply committed to young people. So this question in here is rooted in that. Someone is asking, what are some examples of innovative thinking you've seen from younger generations in the philanthropic space? And when you think about that, have you witnessed or experienced any intergenerational gaps when it comes to philanthropy? So whichever inspires you most, the intergenerational gaps question or the younger generations in philanthropic space, I'll let you guys take whichever one inspires you the most.
I would say for me, where young people are coming up and they're saying, why aren't you opening it up for people like me who just graduated from college to step into philanthropy? And they're just, again, young people they're just telling you in your face, and it's making you rethink, oh, wait, should we maybe just change our model a bit? Why don't we have more young people and their voices being heard in these decisions? Why are we having these conversations without them and without their input? So I see that a lot, and that has already started getting us thinking of, okay, how do we include younger voices more in philanthropy, and how do we start younger, not just, in their 20s? How do we start with in their teens and introducing them to what we're doing, so that they could start thinking already of where to take this in the future. So I see that already. I've been to several conferences where young people are there and they raise their voice and they ask these questions that leave all of us a lot of the time speechless because we don't have the answers. But I think those are the types of like shaking that we need for that transformation that we need in philanthropy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to build off that, I'll take the intergenerational question. I think young people, and when I say young, I mean like millennial, Gen Z, right? Folks that are kind of coming into their adulthood, into their kind of creating families and wealth, but also those that are right behind us. I'm an older millennial. I think we're rethinking a lot of things when it comes to giving, saving, wealth building, financial inclusion. Like, for example, we're not using bank branches. We're not going to a financial advisor. All my friends are on Facebook and TikTok and Reddit getting financial advice, talking about how much money they make, putting a lot of transparency out there around their financial goals, their financial struggles, and sharing advice. I think that's new for the generations. And I think it's going to take, people are going to have to really rethink how they are educating this new generation, how they're engaging them around how they use their money in a way that's different. So that's one. I'm really glad that that's happening though, because it's creating a lot of transparency in the space, whereas before it was easy to have these inequities and talk about them. So that's one piece. And then I really love the tech that's coming out. Companies like Goal Setter, it's another Black woman-owned fintech, is doing some great stuff around youth and helping them think through how to spend their money. My daughter's talking about investing and buying stock now, and she's 10. There's other really cool, a lot of really cool tech. Kitty Credit is teaching people on how to have a credit score. I didn't even think about a credit score until I was in college, and I was being offered a credit card. orientation. So I'm really excited to see how fintech is changing the game as well.
I absolutely love that. I know we are almost at time and I don't need to be yelled at. So I want to just give you both your flowers out loud. Please drop in the chat where folks can stay connected to you all. If it's your website, if it's your Instagram, your Twitter, your email, whatever it is, would love for folks to continue to be in collaboration with everyone. And just thank you both for being your honesty and your truth to this conversation. The thing that I want to leave us with, and then I'm going to pass it back to the good folks at We Give, is that like, BIPOC women leadership isn't just about like strength and perseverance. It's about how consistently BIPOC women continue to show up for the common good. And as Anais talked about love, and I told you I can go on a bell hooks rant around love forever. Bell Hooks said that love is necessary work, and it is in love that we learn to resist, thrive, and lead under any circumstance. So when we think about the moment that we're in this country, across the world, it is not a new one. The fight for racial justice and racial equity is familiar, but it's also painful and it's also hopeful. So as you continue to do the work that you're doing, whether it's through marching in the streets, organizing, or leading your own giving circle, I want you to ask yourself what will be different this time. Because quite frankly, while Anais, myself, and Fonta can give you all the answers around how we can give better and more holistically, the answer lies within you. So what are we all going to do different to warrant a different result? I'm so honored to have been in conversation with those two women today, and just really appreciate the We Give folks for giving us this platform to have this conversation. Please stay in touch with us. You can learn more about Equine Green at equinegreen.org, and I think my colleague is putting that in the chat. And with that, I pass it back to you all on the We Give side to close this out.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you to all of today's wonderful speakers. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Anais. Thank you, Fonta. We're really appreciative of your extremely powerful and valuable insights today. Before we wrap up, we just launched a 2-question poll before exiting the meeting. Make sure you get a chance to fill that out. In the next few days, you can find a recording of today's session on your agenda on Whova. Also want to quickly announce the winner of today's raffle. So today's raffle winner is Masika Henson. Masika, our team will be following up with you via email. So you can select your book and we can get your mailing details. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at the rest of our We Give Summit sessions, and seeing you at our next session, which is Good Trouble, How a New Generation of Changemakers Are Disrupting Philanthropy. This session is going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we hope to see you there. Thank you all so much.